Little Queen, and you mentioned Barracuda as well. I mean, it is an absolute classic anthem. Everybody knows it, of course. I mean, you're a co-writer on that track as well. So talk to me about how that song came together. What's your memories from that one all being pulled together?
Well, that was just a thing that Roger Fisher and I would we would go down to the hall. I just get tired of sitting around my hotel room, so we'd go down there, and as soon as the crew got our stuff set up, we'd start banging away and grinding guitar chords, and just having some fun, getting loose, and that was just a little jam idea that we just sort of mess around with. And I can't remember if it was Mike Fisher or if it was me, or I used to have a tape recorder with me, and I'd record little bits and pieces, and it got suggested by somebody that we record that thing and give it to Ann and Nancy and see what they could do with it, because everybody seemed to like it. It was hearing what we were doing, and so that's how it sort of started, and then we all kind of assembled it, arranged it, and as a band, as a unit. But I mean that happened on another. We sort of got to a point to where there was a dispute over what actual songwriting is. And being a drummer, it's not like I would sit behind the piano and bang out a bunch of chords and go, "Hey, check this out," like Tin Pan Alley or something, which is the way I always kind of that sort of old school. The rules that applied from, old publishing rule, in a lot of ways in rock, it doesn't work. Those rules just don't make sense, because ideas can come from a lot of places.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, there's been a lot of feuding that has come from somebody saying, "Hey, well, that was my idea," or that, some roadie saying, "No, man, I told you that phrase." They say something just horsing around, and somebody ends up using it in a song. They want to be a songwriter. I know it sounds weird, but that's where do you draw the line as far as rock is concerned? It's just a lot of ideas come from a lot of different places, and I know that some of it is it's hard to justify, but other things are pretty obvious. That if this idea hadn't been expressed, or if this thing hadn't been done in a certain way, the song would not have originated. It wouldn't have existed. So you got to, at that point, you have to say, well, that in a way, I guess that's songwriting. The song wouldn't have existed without that idea, or without that thing, whatever it was. So that was my sort of my argument that I used. That everybody agreed. It was just Raj and I, would jam on that and just kind of automatically do things. And we did that a lot, or we would just automatically do our parts, or talk about things maybe, or just. They were just listening to each other. They would just work themselves out, little things, patterns, bits and pieces. And so, is that songwriting or is that arranging? That's the conflict, and that's the in a rock band. I think that kind of stuff happens a lot. I don't know, unless a band has an agreement. The singer's the lyricist and does the melody, and the guitar player does the chord change. Unless that's established and there's an agreement or some kind of a thing like that, I think it's kind of sort of open season to negotiate, or however you want to put it, on how that works. Still a very gray area. I don't know how the laws, rules have changed over time, because it's not the same world now as it was in the 1930s or 20s or whatever.
But I suppose of any Heart song to have your songwriting credit for, that's not a bad one, is it?
No, it's not. I was, if I was going to stick up for myself, I have felt always that it was a good one to do it on.
Yeah, 100%. And in terms of playing with Heart, then, I mean, what's your favorite Heart song to drum to? I mean, it might not necessarily be your favorite song, but what's your favorite drum line from a Heart song?
Um, well, of course, I like Barracuda. But it's not easy because there's a lot of foot action. There's a lot of double. The pattern of the bass drum through the whole thing is, for an old timer, at the we usually do that at the end of the set. It's a lot of work in the ankle and the foot, at the end of the set, at the end of playing the song for 50 years. Um, so it ain't easy, but it's still, I think it really is a complete song. I mean, it what you hope a song does, that song does.
Yeah.
And there's a couple others that I mean, I like Mistral Wind. Mistral Wind kind of came from the same Raj and I kind of jamming out the kind of the main chunk of the song, or not the main chunk, but the just sort of the main pattern of the verse part, chorus part, I guess. Not the verse part, but anyway, that was sort of that sort of started in the same way, just sort of jamming out some patterns. And I think it's, again, a complete song. I think it's got great emotion, it's got great energy, it's got, I mean, it's got that dynamic. Starts out mellow, gets in your face later on in the song. I mean, it's got a lot of everybody, I think, does really nice, tasty little embellishments for everybody did just, I hear people, and it's a kind of a deep cut. So it's cool to know that people really have gotten deep into the record and like that song, and really make a point of saying, although they may have mispronounced the name of the song, I know what they're saying. I know what they're talking about. Yeah, that's certainly one of my favorite songs too.
Fantastic stuff. Now, you recorded a few albums, obviously after that, but by the start of the 80s, the music had begun to change, hadn't it? And Private Audition came out, and it became yours and Steve's last album with the band, didn't it?
Yeah.
So in terms of the sound itself, was that something that was being driven by Anne and Nancy?
Yes, there had been some. There had been some kind of. After all this time, I still haven't figured out a slick, casual way to get into this. Just some. Well, disagreements. Bottom line, I guess. Just so an evolution of attitude and direction that I didn't feel was very positive. I don't think I was alone, but I kind of have a big mouth sometimes. And so I generally sort of, I guess, expected more from us on that last, where that record was, Private Audition. And it just, there was just some difference of opinions. And so that seemed to put it was not easy. I mean, I think there's some pretty good stuff on there, but it just, I've always, the idea of growing in the especially in the studio where you people are excited to see where you're going to go next.
Mhm.
If you get a little too I don't know if self-indulgent is the right. I mean, music is totally self-indulgent. It's so ego-driven and self-indulging. Uh, so that's got to be. It's gonna be there. But at the same time, you sort of. I think you need to take a look at what is this song? What is this record doing? What is it do? Is it doing the things that we want it to do, or is it just totally self-involved, indulging, ego-driven, or attitude? I'm going to do what I want to do, no matter what kind of stuff. What's driving it here? You know what? And so I think that record sort of was getting into that other, maybe not as desirable kind of realm, and made it hard to do in some way.
And in terms of you leaving the band, then I think I'd heard you said before that it was almost like a vote sort of system thing that happened. But what would you have? Obviously, a lot of things were happening at that time with, as you said, egos and disputes and things like that going on. The band was evolving and changing. Would you have been happy to stay in the band had that whole thing not have risen in terms of you being asked to leave the band?
You mean if that record hadn't evolved the way that it did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think had we sort of approached that in a progressive, not progressive like fusion or something, but I mean just more of a really growing. And when I say growing, I mean I don't like taking radical chances, but I like stepping out a little bit. I like pushing it a little bit. I like, and I guess you could make an argument for Private Audition having some of those qualities. I don't agree with that, but just knowing that you're satisfied and that you really think that the public would be satisfied too. That everybody really feels strong, like it seems right. And it's weird to say, but I think a lot of times you know when it is. Like when you do a certain song, and whether it does end up selling 1 million copies or not, you feel like the people, if they don't buy this, they're fools. You know, I mean, you feel that strong about what you're doing. That can happen, and that's what you. It seems like what you should be shooting for. You know, you should be, and it always doesn't work out that way. But that's at least that's the feeling that you should be getting from what you're doing. And I think had we been more progressive in that way, I mean, really feeling like we're coming up with some great stuff here. We're all feeling really satisfied. Yeah, I guess. I mean, that would have changed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
In my view. So yeah.
So how did you feel? Obviously, you've been in the band about 7 years or so at this point, and you've been through the highs. You've released so many fantastic albums, great music. You've toured the world. You've done this, that, and the other. So how did you feel having left the band, having been removed from the band? I mean, were you optimistic? Were you desolate? I mean, what were you feeling inside?
Kind of. It was a little bit of a. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird, shocking, sort of in a way. Now what am I going to do, sort of a thing. Started playing with some friends around town, and I ended up playing with a bunch of other bands. We had records out and stuff. I played with Barry Goodrow from Boston, did an album. Brian the Hunter, played with Richard Marx. I played with a band called Alias, which was Steve Fossen and Roger Fisher were in the band with a couple of Canadian guys that it was a good. I mean, they were all really good bands. So I had a chance to get out and play with a bunch of different people and stay kind of on a certain level.
Yeah. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I spoke with Steve again about this, and he was obviously delighted to get the nod and to find out that you guys have been inducted and everything like that. But it was a funny reaction after that when you realized that you then got to get together and all that sort of stuff that follows. So, what was your initial reaction then when you first found out that you guys were going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Well, I wondered, gee, what is that going to be like? You know, I was kind of skeptical. I didn't know really if I wanted to be involved. I thought it would be a really cool thing to be inducted, great honor and all that. But as far as just coming together, and we hadn't spoken. I think I went and saw Ann and Nancy doing an unplugged kind of thing in Seattle. And we chatted. I went backstage after. This was years after I'd left the band. We chatted, and it was fine. I always got along with Ann well. I mean, she's always been fun to talk to, and she's really smart. She's very quick with it, and so she's always been really fun to. But you know, things happen you hear people talking and this and that going on, and a bunch of years go by. So I didn't know what was going to happen with it, and I was a little bit. And then I heard some things about the way it was going to be put together, or what we were going to do. The guys I'm talking about. The idea was to have us play Crazy on You, and then to have their current lineup of guys play Barracuda. And so that didn't sit very well with me. Didn't quite get that. Didn't quite understand how that. But I didn't want to make it. It wasn't a big deal to me to make, like, oh, I'm not going, kind of a thing out of it. But the whole, I don't know, for some reason the vibe, when we rehearsed, because we hadn't played Crazy on You together for decades, just the vibe around the rehearsal was kind of weird. And we didn't hang at all together. We didn't talk, really. We didn't sit at the same table. We didn't. It was just weird. It was weird, and and I thought, well, it's personal opinion. I thought that the way that Barracuda sounded was very odd to me. Just did not sound. It sounded odd. That's all. So I didn't quite get what they were trying to say, what they were trying to prove, if anything. I didn't take it very well generally. So, but it was beyond that. It was pretty cool. It was so I was very kind of. I mean, it was kind of surreal. I was torn between. My son got to be there, so that was very cool to have him be able to be part of that. But just such a great thing to happen to us, and then to have the feeling of the environment of the band just be messed up. And I've talked to so many other bandmates, friends from other bands, about what happens between guys who put great music out, they make a bunch of money, all your dreams have come true, and you can't, you end up with this hatred of your bandmates. You can't. So you can't. I mean, I've seen guys on stage, and maybe we had the same kind of feeling, where they can't. They don't want to be breathing the same air as their former band mates. You know, it's strange.